I'm Jancy McPhee, and I'm the Executive Director of SciArtExchange. Welcome to Design Your Habitat. We have some very special guests today who will help us to talk about functional space communities. So that would be basically moving us from thinking about our personal habitats to whole cities in space. So our first guest today is the founder and director of STEAMSpace Education and Outreach, Holly Melear, and she works to create education and outreach for all students globally in order to move out, up, and beyond.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jancy, for having us here. I am so excited to be here with all of you today.
And one of the key projects and programs of STEAMSpace is called Cities in Space. So we're pleased to also have a second guest today, Cuatro Hanover, who is a multi-year Cities in Space participant. So I'm really excited today to give you something a little bit different and to team with STEAMSpace. So thank you so much to both of you for joining us.
Thank you so much for letting me be here. This is such an honor.
We are really excited to have both of you. And we will hear from both of you very soon, but let's please start with Holly so she can give us some background about Cities in Space. But let's first start by talking about you, Holly. How did you get to where you are and end up founding STEAMSpace?
Well, thanks for asking me. Yes. So when I first start talking about STEAMSpace, I like to talk about my family and the family environment that I grew up in. I like telling people I came from a STEAMy family. I grew up with not only artists and musicians, but I also grew up with astronomers, mathematicians, and lawyers. So we always loved incorporating science with the arts. And one of the consistent things for my whole family was a love for the stars. One of my best childhood memories was in my mother's very eclectic, artsy kitchen. I would look up at the ceiling, and on the ceiling was a poster of Einstein with all the stars behind him. And through my whole life, I've kept looking up. So after my college career, I had several positions, but I ended up settling into education and becoming a teacher. And over 22 years, I've taught many different things. I've taught visual art, I've taught science, I've taught engineering, I've taught 3D printing, and it all goes together so well. And I've continued looking to the universe and the stars.
So some people might think that that was an eclectic mishmash, but you somehow make it all work together as one journey. That's amazing.
It's a beautiful journey, and not to get on a soapbox, but there have been plenty of studies where STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, has worked great with the huge initiative and huge push with STEM. But researchers have found that when you incorporate the arts, the learning and the achievement skyrockets. And so researchers and scientists and educators are learning this past 20 years what I have known in my heart all along. So in 2011, we all saw the shuttle system closing down. Many felt sad about it. I have so much nostalgia for it. And it was an interesting time. But in the background, new space and commercial space industry was working harder than ever. And there was a tingling little excitement with many of us who want to explore and push for the stars. And we have seen, since the shuttle system closed down, an amazing stellar rocketry of new space collaborating with governmental space. And we are now pushing out towards the universe and the stars faster than ever before. And our opportunities for living on Moon and Mars and traveling to deep space and being voyagers and settlers of space, it's there. It's there, it's here, it's coming. So that began emerging in my soul in 2011. And then in 2015, I had one of those spark moments. And I talk about those spark moments because so many of us have had those. And if you haven't, when you do, because you will, pay attention to it. Quite often, a spark moment is a very, very quiet voice. But it's that quiet voice that is full of excitement and passion and dreams. So my spark moment, I had been teaching all day, and that time I had a very young daughter, and I came home and my family was watching the news, just a nonchalant, normal day. And on the local news, a new space company had moved right outside my hometown in Austin, Texas. It was Firefly Aerospace. And they were interviewing the CEO and founder of Firefly, Tom Marcusic. And he was talking about the trajectory that Firefly was planning on and how they were going to be contributing to the new space, this golden age of space that was happening in the world all around us. And there was my spark. And I felt it deep in my bones. And I was like, this is it. This is what I want. And I looked at my family and I said, I know what I want to do next. And they were like, what? And I said, I want to make space settlers, because this is the time, this is the moment. And in my education career, not only did I love teaching academics and love teaching art and science, I had a lot of extra training, we call it progressive education, on how to really help nurture leadership. Because yes, academics are so important, and you can't travel to space and move forward as a leader without other skills such as collaboration, presentation, empathy, not fearing failure. Knowing failure is essential. So to me, this triggered my spark. And I like to say the universe listens. And so the moment I said that, things began changing, tumbling quickly. And within 3 months, I was planning our very first Cities in Space student competition and conference with another nonprofit organization, New Worlds Institute. New Worlds would be working with the adults, and STEAMSpace and Cities in Space would be for children ages 4th through 12th grade. I was going to have a space settlement design competition. You had to build your city in space based on 1,000 people population that was built to grow. And though there were lots of requirements, I did also give a lot of flexibility. They could have video, they could have 3D model, they could have emerging technology. They had to do the requirements, but then, which we'll talk about more a little bit later, they could explore their personal passions as well, because there are a lot of things that make up having a thriving community. So as I began to build this first conference, we didn't have a lot of time, but I had done events for many, many years, and I was like, well, I don't just want a competition. That's kind of boring, blah. I want speakers. I want to be different. I want these kids to have industry engagement. I want them to meet these actual leaders and doers and workers in space so they can see where they want to go to college, where they want to go beyond college, and how they can be a part of the space industry in this new age of space. And not only that, I want reciprocity. I want our industry leaders to see who their future employees are going to be. Because the kids in the classroom right now, they're brilliant, they're amazing, they're brave, and employers need to be ready for them. And so I want to have a reciprocity between student and leader. But not only that, I want to have film, I want to have music, I want to have art, I want to have makers and exhibitors. Let the kids touch things, move things. Let's create a movement and a community. So off I ran, and I was like, we'll probably have 75 kids. It's our first one. And few weeks into it, we had 100 kids, and then 200 kids, and then 400 kids. And at 500 students and teachers, the venue was calling saying, please shut this down. You've reached fire code capacity. And so we began turning schools away. And so since then, we now just hosted our 5th Cities in Space. This was our 2nd year to be global. So we have students in other countries participating virtually. And we have also expanded to have multiple conferences a year, including our leadership conference. And we've had our first round of ambassadors, which Cuatro is a part of. And so we are just loving our growth and loving watching these students create a movement and a community together to push up, out, and beyond to the stars.
You've said a lot of amazing things, you know, very, very interesting things, right, that I just wanted to echo a little bit, because our two organizations share a lot of the same vision, which is one of the reasons why it's so awesome to be able to have us collaborate today. And a couple of points that you made is, first of all, people are ready. They want to be a part of this. The students are ready. They're looking for the opportunities. The industry is ready to interact early with the students and identify how they can help keep their inspiration and their interests going. And then you've also talked a lot about how important it is to have diverse experiences and, you know, not only be exposed to science and engineering and math and technology, but also the creative communication formats, the other sorts of creative thinking and problem solving. All those skills are really essential, and SciArtExchange totally agrees with that. And I think the other thing that I thought was very interesting about what you said is you were talking about sparks of creativity. And you know, neuroscience and psychology tells us that at the basis of creativity is how you connect diverse ideas together in a novel way. And in order to have enough material, you want to do your deep dives into subjects, but also have diverse exposure to and experiences, because you never know how different bits of information and experiences can be created to lead you in an interesting and valid and important and passionate direction. So you by talking about your own journey, you're also talking about a lot of really important concepts here that are useful, I think, for everyone to be thinking about, you know, how they can be the most of who they are, both as an individual and as a creative team member. So I interrupted you. I know you wanted to talk a little bit more about Cities in Space. So please continue.
Well, no, I mean, I echo all of that, Jancy. I mean, that's exactly right. And, you know, that's one reason why we have loved hosting SciArtExchange to our Cities in Space competitions, because you get to expose these children to amazing film and art that they might not get to see during the school year. So it's very essential for that. I think the only thing I'd like to conclude with is to show a little snip of a video that we made from our Cities in Space in 2018. Cuatro will probably remember it well. We were a pretty crowded conference, but I like to treat it like a dinner party. I love dinner parties. And I always say at my dinner parties, which are always a little too crowded in my small house, that a crowded table is a happy table. And that's what we find at Cities in Space. A crowded conference with lots of kids and lots of teachers is a really happy conference. So I'm going to go ahead and share that video with you before we turn it over to Jancy and Cuatro.
I believe that humanity's destiny is in the stars.
Just getting to space is in fact the easiest part, because once you're in space, you actually have to live in it, right? And space wants you dead.
I have learned that through STEAM we can solve many different problems.
Altitude convergence, the radar has locked on the ground. Touchdown.
Yes.
Let's say we are attacked by asteroids. After our probe locates the asteroid.
You guys are here at a really exciting time. We're all talking about space.
STEAM is going to help our generation.
Want to go to space? Let's go.
We're going to be the new generation in Mars.
It's the closest chance to Earth we have in outside of Earth.
We'll have a colony that can grow and that can move mankind to another place.
Reach. Try the new. Experiment. Learn.
So we're going to use algae to clean the water if it ever gets dirty.
That is for our thorium reactor.
We had to use like actual research journals and like published papers.
At first, we didn't know about sulfur concrete at all.
We'll get it from other planets and then we'll purify it and then we'll divvy it out to everybody.
To have a truly thriving community, everyone is needed.
One of the first times we ever realized that there are no real borders was when we were in space.
If you try hard enough, you can accomplish anything.
Wonderful job, you guys. Everyone clap, everybody. And I'll see you next year.
Now you, go out there in that world. Go build something amazing.
All right, but thank you for letting me share a little bit about my story. I get really excited because I just see so much brilliance with these kids coming into college careers right now and into high school. It's very impressive.
Well, I can understand that, and we're going to hear from one of them in just a minute. But I also wanted to say that it's kind of funny because you mentioned how the closing of the shuttle program was kind of an important moment in your creative journey. And I actually had exactly the same experience. It was very similar, but I was on the scientific planning committee for a scientific conference, and the title of the conference was The Next Golden Age of Human Spaceflight. And I had one of those creative moments where it just seemed so obvious to me that we needed to engage a whole lot of people in that planning, even the ones that were not necessarily already in the space community, people of all ages from different countries. And so I created a mechanism to do that, and that was the beginnings of our Humans in Space art program, which then later was held under the nonprofit SciArtExchange. And I just wanted to show off my City in Space example from the Humans in Space Youth Art Competition. It's right behind me. It's this beautiful artwork that we got last year for our Moon Youth Art Competition, and it was done by Ekaterina Vaitieva. And it's really beautiful. You probably can't see it that well, but it's really cool. And apparently the Moon City is so awesome that they've put Earth on for sale because, you know, everybody wants to live on the moon. So anyway, it's very lovely. So I'm excited now to introduce our next speaker, Cuatro, and he's a junior currently at Allen Academy, which is in the Austin area, and he's a 4-year veteran of Cities in Space. And he's also currently a STEAMSpace ambassador, which he can talk to you about a little bit, and Holly mentioned also. But that's not all he does. He's also on his rocketry team, and he has sent experiments into suborbital space, and he wants to be an aerospace engineer. So very happy to introduce you, Cuatro. Please tell us a little bit about your experience with Cities in Space.
Howdy. So I just want to start off with kind of giving a little backstory of why I want to be an aerospace engineer. Because when I was a really little kid, I can remember hearing about New Horizons and how it was going farther than anything we've ever made before. And I thought that would be coolest. And so when I was really young, I decided I want to do something like that. And then come time, I hear about this competition called Cities in Space. And I was like, ooh, this will be fun. I'll design a colony. And then I stopped. I was like, and then what? Where am I going to put it? What am I going to do with it? So then I did some research into it, and I found a company called Deep Space Industries who had an idea that I liked, but I thought I could do different. The idea was mining asteroids by bringing them into Earth orbit. And so I decided, well, what if I put a base on a dwarf planet in the asteroid belt and did it from there? And so that's where the idea of what I call the Sirius project comes from. And I've actually stuck with this project for 4 years now over my career in Cities in Space. And I've tried to improve upon it, starting with my first year, where all I had was one little rough design of a space vehicle and one little base on Ceres. And so then from there on year 2, I decided I'd add much more. And the big thing I've learned from this is listen to what people ask you, because people tend to ask you what you need to do. So this year I added RCS jets onto my designs because someone asked me, well, how are you going to turn in space? I sat down, I was like, how will I turn? And so then I went and did research into RCS jets. And I designed a new base for the series. And then someone else asked me, well, what do you do when you get there and you need to leave quickly? So I designed an escape vehicle. And then in year 3, I added even more. This year, we decided to add a base into Europa, the ice moon of Jupiter. I designed long-range probes to search for different asteroids that we wanted. I designed beacons that would then be attached to these asteroids so we could find them later. I made my original design much better, and I improved upon it and made it sleeker. I even tried to make an exosuit and a on-planet rover to travel and explore. And then this year, I've done a lot to improve upon it. In year 4, we have a free space base that orbits around and acts as a hub. We have new drones that go out and latch on and push asteroids to us so we don't have to go as far and waste as much fuel. We switched to ion propulsion because someone said, well, how are you going to get all that fuel out there? It's so expensive. And I was like, that's a good question. Let's switch to electrical. And then I researched what electrical engines were. And we improved upon our base design. We made things modular so it can fit many different roles. We made a Europa probe to explore those deep, deep oceans and see if the most likely place in the universe that has life does. And what I did every year was I took a question and then I did research into that question and I learned from it and I added into it. Because as smart as you can be, or as clever as you can be, or as innovative as you can be, you're going to miss something. And that's the one thing I want to give away is you need to listen to questions and criticism, because that's how you learn and grow, and that's how we adapt and improvise and innovate. One man innovates, the other men improve. That's how this works. Is if one person makes a design, well, then someone else is going to take that design and make it better and better. And that's how we get cars that can go 200 miles an hour from ones that went slower than a human walks.
Wow, you really are an amazing ambassador for all of this. You've said some really incredible things that everybody needs to hear. Yes.
Thank you.
You have to listen to the feedback that you get and think about, is there something in there that I need to pay attention to? The questions that are asked, the criticisms. Nobody likes to be criticized. It's kind of scary sometimes, but it's important to pay attention and see, is there something in there that I need to know? And then you also talked about the value of your team, that it's not just your head, but that you have other people that bring different things into the mix. And Cities in Space is a team activity. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. Mistakes are inevitable when it's just one person.
Well, sometimes we make
That's why
mistakes
you
as
have
a
a team.
Yeah.
That's why you need a team. If one person misses something or makes a mistake, you have your team to support you.
That's really
There's no
excellent.
such thing as a one-man band.
Wow.
I love that, Cuatro. That is really inspirational, and thank you for sharing that.
And did you say you were 40 or 50 years old?
Nope, 17.
Okay, well, Holly said something about the next generation is smart and brave and amazing, and I think that you are a very good example of that.
Thank you.
So I thank you for all of that. And I was wondering, we'd love to hear from either of you. Maybe Holly, you can start about how can we relate both of your experience in creating cities in space and participating in cities in space, and maybe think of ways that we can relate some of this to people who are currently stuck at home and things that they could consider, as they maybe think about expanding their horizon, which is actually the umbrella to what this Design Your Habitat campaign is about. It's part of a larger program that we hope to eventually create, which helps everyone to think beyond and it really expand their views and their perspectives. So Holly, have you got any ideas for how we move from a personal space to a whole city, and maybe some tips to share for those of us who are in more isolated and confined conditions than usual?
Well, yes, I have so many thoughts with that. I guess I would like to talk a wee bit more about having a thriving community, to piggyback a little bit on Cuatro, and then what that can look like in this home isolated environment. So earlier when I was talking, I mentioned STEAM, science, technology, engineering, art, and math. And I mentioned having a thriving, not just surviving community. Just like Cuatro was talking about needing a team, listening to the questions, and taking in other perspectives, that is a huge part of our mission. And that is why, even though all of our teams have the same requirements for cities in space, their presentations can be on their own personal passion. And at the time of COVID-19, it's a very important time to be thinking about your own personal passions. So when students come to Cities in Space, even though they'll see lots of possibly similarly structured projects, when they present, they could be talking about rocket science, aerospace, engineering, or they might be talking about how do we create new ideologies? How do we create a new legal system? What does law enforcement look like? How do we think about agriculture? What does art look like when we're living in a community? How do we have music? How do we actually have good community time? What does fashion look like? There are all those things that create a thriving community, because with just engineering or just agriculture, yes, those are things that help us survive, but we need the spice, we need the individuality, and we need to all do it together. So when we're thinking about this isolated time, we can imagine in many ways that we're in our own colony. We're having to do a lot of virtual communication, which I think at this point in time, 4 weeks, 5 weeks in, we're all getting pretty comfortable with. I got to say, I've gotten a lot more comfortable than I was 2 weeks ago and 3 weeks ago, for sure. We have to think about keeping our health. We have to think about shared resources and not buying more than 2 products at the grocery store, and how are we going to keep all of that together? We have to think about electricity and energy and footprint and all these things. I mean, let's just think about our atmosphere since COVID-19 began and how much happier our skies are because of the footprint change for emissions. We need to be thinking about those things when we're moving out there, just like we are right now here. So I would say for you at home, if you are thinking about creating a city, you'll want to develop it where there is shared resource. There is a place where people can come together to have health and happiness, where you can set policy together and have a system in place that's functioning, where you can continue to explore, whether it's for minerals and science, or to see the rest of the geographical area, or continue to look upward and outward beyond Mars into deeper space. So you can really start pretending at home of what that would look like and really be thinking about your passions of, well, what would be some of the most important spaces for me personally? I know that after I've worked all day, I often want to come home and I want to paint, or I want to play my piano, which I don't play very well, but I can plunk around. I want to do those things which inspire me and instill a passion. I want to read great literature. So thinking about those spaces is just as important for a thriving community as the functioning aspects of community. However, we all do need to be able to breathe and eat and continue to learn. So those things are incredibly important, but I would say really dive into your own personal passions.
And I think that's great advice, and what a wonderful time to be doing that. We can do a little bit more focusing on ourselves. I think we're all actually surprisingly busy still, but we're not in our usual mode, and so sometimes we can take a little bit more time to reflect when we're not just constantly churning and doing and doing. And you also mentioned something you and I had discussed earlier before we got on today, which was a possible activity that we could be all doing at home. It might be a little bit harder for us to put together a team right now, but we could start working on our own personal cities in space designs and thinking about a lot of these topics that we've been talking about, and some of the things you learn by designing your city in space may actually help you to improve your current habitat as well. But it's also a very interesting, fun, and creative activity. And I was just wondering, Holly, do you have any tips for anyone, uh, who might want to build their own city? And then Cuatro, I'd like to ask you the same question since you have all that experience. Holly, do you have any ideas that you want to relay?
I absolutely do, and I know Cuatro will have amazing ideas as well. So I'll let him step in right after me. But yes, you have lots of choices. For those of you who are very computer minded, there are lovely building games that many of you will be familiar with, such as Minecraft, Tinkercad, Maya, Google Sketch, Kerbal. Those are wonderful ways to build virtual cities and virtual habitats if you are dedicated to working on a computer. However, I would also challenge you to get up and get kinesthetic and get moving, because we are all in this fairly restrained environment right now with our stay at home and our isolation. So getting up and getting your body moving is really important, and it can really release those endorphins that give you happiness. So I would challenge you to go dig through recycling. Clean recycling, please, not gross recycling. Go dig through recycling, go through your parents' craft drawers, pull out magazines, and begin building. And you can start by making a central hub and then branching out to those other places such as gardens and community areas and living spaces and laboratories Maybe you'll make some vehicles as well, so you can go and do scientific research and testing and mining perhaps. But start with your central hub and build out if you're feeling intimidated by where to begin. It's amazing what one can create with cereal boxes, Amazon boxes, a little bit of paint and Sharpie, maybe some glue for varnish. Play around, explore, and let yourself make a lot of mistakes and laugh about it. And let yourself learn as you go, because you will. As you begin building, you'll begin thinking of other things you'll want, and have a ton of fun. And if you find that you are really getting into this and love this, I encourage you to build a team. We accept teams as small as 3 and as large as, I would say, 15. We recommend 10, but we will take up to 15 for one team. But see what comes out and see what is important to you about building this thriving city. And with that, I'll turn it over to Cuatro.
Yes, Cuatro, do you have any quick tips or experiences that you want to share with everyone?
Well, to start off, when people say the sky is the limit, don't let them limit you like that. There is no limit to imagination. Human creativity is an incredible thing that there is no limit for. People thought I was crazy when I said, I want to make a base that sits on an asteroid that's going around an asteroid belt. People told me I was crazy, but here I am doing it for my 4th year. It's never put yourself in a box of that's not possible. People told Einstein his theory of relativity was impossible. There was no way to mathematically do that. He did it. People thought there's no way that Thomas Edison can make that light bulb light. We're just going to be stuck with oil lamps. Now we have lights. It's never, ever put yourself in a box of that's not possible. Be crazy. Go out of the box. Think crazy thoughts that no one else has thought before, because that's how we get advancement. And also, the NASA slogan of failure is not an option. Failure is the best option. Failure is the world's greatest teacher. There's nothing better to teach you what you did wrong than the sting of knowing that you did something wrong. But embrace that. Embrace the knowledge that you're wrong and you can be wrong. And then go past it. That's the only way to get better at anything. That's the only way to push past anything. And also, get a hobby. Hobbies are fun. And if you're going to do something like this, incorporate your hobby. Because when you're building a base for people, remember it's a base for people. People need to live in these. So you can't have like these military bunkers that have ration juice that people have to slurp out of a bottle that tastes like bugs. Make it somewhere where people can live and thrive, because, well, that's how we're going to get people there. Because I, for one, am terrified of going out into space, because, as I've heard several times from the Citizen Space Conference, space wants you dead. Space is not a fun place, but if we have imagination and the willpower to do so, I think that humanity can conquer space.
Woohoo!
Bravo, Cuatro. Excellent.
Wow, that is just incredible. I'm actually getting like goosebumps. I'm feeling really hopeful about the future. I think everything's going to be great. And you know, we've heard a lot of really good tips today about everything, you know, living in our current world, living in our future world on different planets. And I think it's really amazing. And some tips for life: listen to feedback you get from others, give yourself the opportunity to have broad experiences and think outside of the box and follow your passions. And I'm very, very happy to have both of you on here to talk to us about that today. Last thing, Holly, if somebody wanted to apply to Cities in Space, how would they do that?
Oh, thank you for asking. Yes, you can very simply go to our STEAMSpace homepage and you will see contact information. You'll see videos and all sorts of links to previous cities in space and be able to read about our history and our mission. So that is at steam-space.org. And you can contact me through that website as well. I would love to hear from you. And Jancy, I just can't thank you enough for letting us be on your amazing podcast today.
Well, thank you so much, Holly, for joining us. And Cuatro, thank you also to you. I think it's been really excellent to hear from you.
Thank you. And I just want to leave with something to people who hear this and want to go to Cities in Space. See you there.
That's awesome. Thank you so much to both of you. And
thank you.
Till the next time, see you all at home and in your cities in space.
See you at Cities in Space.